I'm going to be continuing today the conversation that David began a few weeks ago about grace and explore how we can open to receive it more in our lives. So I know that for many of us on the spiritual path, of course, we come here to be uplifted, right? We come together in community to be inspired. We do our meditations and our practices to open our hearts, to clear our minds. But sometimes it can feel like a lot of work, right? We may have the intent to spiritually awaken or even to become enlightened, whatever that may mean to you. So we meditate and we pray and we spend time listening to our guides or journaling or doing ceremonies and rituals or trying to change our thoughts, to be more selfless in our community. And it can seem like it's a lot to do to grow and evolve on the spiritual path. But our spiritual life and our regular life, they don't have to feel like such a burden and such a struggle. We can actually open the door to more ease in our spiritual practices, to more ease in our growth and development and unfoldment, and in our personal lives as well as our spiritual lives, with grace, with this idea of grace. So David had already talked to you a little bit about grace, but I'll maybe review a bit of that. Grace is something that you would typically hear more in religious communities. You might have heard it in the Christian church, for example. Not as much in non-religious spiritual communities or Buddhist communities or things like that. They don't talk about the word grace so much, but it's just as relevant to anyone on the spiritual path, even if you're not religious, no matter what religious background you might come from. And it's essentially defined as the unmerited blessings given to us by the divine. The unmerited blessings given to us by the divine. So that means that we don't earn this. We're not out there trying to be good in order to get grace. Grace is simply given because of, as I talked a little bit in the meditation about, because of the unconditional nature of spirit, of God, of the divine. And it's given spontaneously. It's not something you can predict or make happen, but you can be more receptive to it. And it's important to remember that grace is not just something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. A quote from one of my spiritual teachers, Mata Amritananamayi, also known as Amma, the hugging saint. She says, grace is openness. By remaining open, you let go of your ego and narrow-minded views and allow grace, divine grace, to express itself through you. Amma's whole message is love and service. And so when we open to grace, we find ourselves capable of far more than what we can do from our own personal energy. Grace is not just a gift to bless our lives, but to bless all beings through us. So although we don't earn it, we do need to make efforts on the spiritual path to prepare us for when grace arrives, to open us more to it. It's not just about sitting back and expecting it to shower upon us. And the Yoga Sutras have something interesting to say about this. They don't speak specifically about grace, but about how to cultivate the ability to experience that transcendent state of oneness in which grace happens for us. So in chapter 1, verse 12, it's said that abhyasa, I'm going to use the Sanskrit words first and then I'll explain them. Abhyasa and vairagya are the means to still the fluctuations of consciousness, which is what creates that oneness or that transcendence. So abhyasa means practice. It means our continuous efforts in our spiritual growth that are consistent over time and with devotion. So the more that we continue our practice, and that's why it's called practice, not perfection. Yoga, practice. Meditation, practice. This is not about getting it right and being perfect. It's about continuing to come back to, prayer, continuing to come back to spiritual community, continuing to come back to our meditation cushion or our mat, and doing the practices that we know cultivate more quiet mind, open heart, that we know feed and nourish our body, mind, heart, and spirit, so that we can be more of who we're here to be, who we're called to be in this life. Now, the other Sanskrit word there is vairagya. So these two, abhyasa and vairagya, are said to go together. And vairagya means non-attachment. Non-attachment. So we live our spiritual principles and our practices because we know that it's, for lack of a better word, the right thing to do. It's what we're called to do. We know what is in the highest good and the best good of what we can and are called to do in that moment, no matter what the results are. Non-attachment is letting go of all that. We let go of our expectations and our attachments of what happens as a result of our practices, as a result of our selfless service, right? We don't go into the soup kitchen waiting and expecting someone to say how awesome we are, right? That's not really selfless service. I mean, it's nice to get that, of course, and there's nothing wrong with wanting acknowledgement. But when we're really practicing vairagya, non-attachment, we do it because we know that this is what's needed. This is what's called upon for us to do in the world, to offer to others. So you can't make grace happen with abhyasa practice and vairagya, non-attachment, but you can cultivate the conditions within you in which you are more able to receive. You're more able to be that open receptacle to the divine. And sometimes grace shows up and we miss it. We don't catch it or allow ourselves to truly receive it because we're not doing these practices that have our mind present, right? That's why I talk about presence a lot. When we're really present and we're practicing presence as much as we can in our daily life, being right here in this moment now with open heart and quiet mind, we'll see grace showing up a lot more. We'll notice it. We'll feel it inside of ourselves. We'll witness it flowing through someone else or flowing through us. And it takes a real receptivity, openness, and awareness to truly benefit from grace when it shows up for us. So I like to think of that what we want to do is install in ourselves a grace catchment system. It's like rain catchment systems, and they're catching the rain so that you have water for later. Well, if you have a grace catchment system in you, it's that open receptacle that's catching the grace that's showing up all the time, like those sunbeams that were coming through the meditation through the trees. And the sun is always shining, even if it's cloudy, it's still shining. So we want to have our grace catchment systems open and ready to receive that. So here's your grace catchment system to set up through 6 different ways. Six. I can count on my fingers. 6 different ways to develop that grace catchment system for you and really open to receive grace. And the first one you may not have expected, but I call it transcending the polarities. Transcending the polarities, to transcend the polarities. So, and I think this was in Marianne's reading about we don't always, have gratitude for things that aren't so great, right? So when we're labeling things as good or bad, or right or wrong, or us versus them, we actually block grace from coming into our grace catchment system. Because we're thinking, oh, grace can only show up in this way because this is good. This is nice. This is enlightening. And that over there, that's not. Well, we don't know how grace is going to show up. It often shows up in unexpected ways. And we don't want to be locked into fixed ways of perceiving ourselves, others, or the world. So when you notice yourself judging or slipping into a polarized view of your life, try to transcend the polarity. So what you do is you identify that it's going on. Okay, I'm judging and I'm creating a polarity here. And then transcending it by finding a higher quality or a higher response to that. For example, if I was catching myself in a polarity of good or bad, maybe I'm saying, ooh, this is really good. This is really good. Okay, if this situation were neither good nor bad, what might I feel? How might I respond? So I might be cultivating the neutral witness within me, which is our divine consciousness, and simply be present with whatever is. I might be cultivating what we just talked about, vairagya, non-attachment. Like I'm seeing this and I'm not expecting it to turn out great or expecting it to turn out bad, because we also do that, don't we? We go, oh, well, that's going to turn out bad because I can tell that it's going that way. That's messing with your grace catchment system. We could step into equanimity, which is even-mindedness. I'm going to simply see this as it is. Or we can cultivate a sense of inner peace. So that's especially good when we're seeing something that we're judging or labeling as bad. Like the equanimity and peace as an inner quality is very, very helpful. So we can still stay open to grace, right? Which flows into us, but can flow through us and then maybe assist with a situation that's causing somebody harm, right? So a really good example of cultivating this inner equanimity, of seeing things with even-mindedness, not judging things as good or bad, is a story that I remember hearing many years ago. I believe it came from China, but somewhere in Asia. Some of you may have heard it before or been familiar with it. I know it is the story of the farmer and his neighbor. Does this sound familiar to anybody yet? All right, well, good, because then it'll be new to you. All right, so there's this farmer, and he has this really nosy neighbor who always comes over to see what's going on with him. So the neighbor comes over and he sees that the farmer has a nice strong horse. And he's like, oh, wow, that's great. You've got a strong horse, and that's really going to help you have a good season this year. You're going to be able to plow those fields well with that horse. And the farmer says, could be good, could be bad. Who's to say? And the neighbor kind of thinks that was a weird response, but he goes on his way and he comes back the next week. He's like, well, I want to see what's up over here. He comes back and he sees that the horse is gone. And he says to the farmer, oh my gosh, oh no, your horse is gone. What happened? And the farmer said, well, yeah, the horse ran away the other night, broke out of its pen. And the neighbor's like, oh no, you are sunk. You're never going to be able to get those fields cultivated. This is horrible. And the farmer says, could be good, could be bad. Who's to say? So the next week, of course, the neighbor's back, poking his nose in what's going on with the farmer. And he sees that not only is the horse back, the horse brought another horse with it. So now the farmer has two horses, and the neighbor goes, wow, what good fortune. That's amazing. I can't believe now you have two horses. Your son is going to be able to help you. You're going to get the fields. You're going to be able to plow more fields. It's going to be an amazing harvest. How lucky you are. And the farmer says, could be good, could be bad. Who's to say? The next week, we're getting there, you guys. It's not going to go on forever. The next week, the neighbor comes back and he sees that the farmer's son has a crutch and his leg is in a splint. And the neighbor goes, oh no, what happened to your son? The farmer goes, well, he was to break in the new horse and the horse bucked him and he fell and he broke his leg. And the neighbor goes, oh, that's terrible. You needed his help for this harvest. Now what are you going to do? That's awful. And the farmer says, could be good, could be bad. Who's to say? Okay, we're coming to the end, you guys. We're coming to the end. This is the end. So the next week, who rolls into town but the emperor and his army? And he's looking for all the able-bodied men, strong young men, to conscript into his army because he wants to go to war with a neighboring nation. And of course, he passed over the farmer's son because he had a broken leg. So I think this is a fantastic example of being open to grace that you don't know where it's going to come from. And sometimes things you could easily label them as bad, but they might have the blessings of grace in them and you're just not seeing it yet. So that's a great example of transcending the polarities. And it's also an example of the second way to open to more grace is trust the process. Trust the process. Didn't the farmer trust the process? The neighbor didn't. The neighbor's like thinking everything's awful and everything's great. And he's like really attached to how it needs to be. But the farmer was totally trusting the process. We can trust that there's a higher plan happening in our life. When we trust the process, we affirm and know that blessings are coming, that what we need shows up when we need it, and that the outer appearances of circumstances may be deceiving. I'm sure that when you look back on your life, at least I know for me, often the difficult times gave us unexpected gifts. I know they certainly did in my life. We might have matured, we gained wisdom, we developed compassion, we might have learned better ways to respond to life. And we would not be who we are today without those challenges. So trust the process and know that whatever shows up can have blessings and bring us grace. All right. So the third way to expand on your rain catchment, your rain grace, your grace rain catchment system is to live in the flow. It's very similar to trusting the process. Live in the flow. This was my mantra for 2020. And it really served me well through that year. It's just go with the divine flow of where it's carrying you. Let spirit carry you. You don't have to be swimming against the current. You can trust that it's going to carry you where you need to go. It allows us to open to receive what comes to us and let the divine carry us on its current rather than rowing upstream, which is a lot of work. We think we want to go that way, but you know what? Spirit's got another idea. And maybe going with that flow, living in the flow and carrying it down there will actually bring us more grace than that fixed idea of where we wanted to go. So this drops us into a deep state of receptivity, living in the flow. And when we're open and receptive, of course, more good can pour into us. And in fact, the universe loves having an open vessel to pour into, right? Have you heard that saying? The universe loves a vacuum. I mean, it hates a vacuum. So it wants to put something into the vacuum, right? So if you have that emptiness and that openness, it's going to pour things into you because that's what it wants to do. It wants to fill in all those spaces like water, right? In the Tao Te Ching, it says that water always flows to everything, right? So it's going to flow and fill in all those empty spaces, make space for it in your rain catchment system. The fourth practice or principle that will open you to more grace and open up your grace catchment system is what Marianne was talking about in her reading, gratitude. Gratitude. So the more we express gratitude for the blessings in our lives, the more we begin to see. Yes, the more we begin to recognize. If we're looking for it, we're going to find it, right? If you're looking for a crack in the sidewalk, you're definitely going to find it, right? If you're looking for grace, if you're looking for blessings, if you're looking for things to be grateful about, you will find them and they will find you. So this allows us to perceive the grace, to perceive the good that is flowing into our lives all the time. And you've probably heard Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith saying, what we appreciate appreciates. So it's like a bank account, right? Interest appreciates, right? So whatever we're investing our appreciation in, that's going to grow. And it grows the more we put our attention on gratitude. So we'll see that grace is already here in many ways. The fifth way to open up that grace catchment system is to ask for it, to simply ask for grace, to be willing to say, Divine Mother, Father God, please fill me with grace. Please let your grace flow through me as I go about my day, as I'm with my loved ones, as I'm cooking Thanksgiving meal, as I go to work, as I drive home, as I lay down to sleep. Please let me be an open receptacle for your grace. Ask for it. not just to receive, but ask for the eyes to perceive it. Ask to see what you already have and ask to have it pour through you so you can share grace with others. Be like a fountain. So a fountain is not only filled, it's overflowing. So if you let yourself fill with that divine grace and let it overflow, then you'll have so much to share with others. And the sixth and last of the keys to developing more of a grace catchment system and having that opening to grace is surrender. Surrender. That's letting go and letting God, right? I'm sure you've heard that saying before. I like to say that surrender brings serenity, and it does for me. And we're surrendering our inner battle. We're surrendering all our thoughts that cause fear and agitation and distraction and that block us from receiving grace. We're surrendering our distractions from opening to our highest good. We're releasing all of that. And as we surrender that inner battle, it brings us quiet mind. It brings us inner peace and serenity. Emptying out, if you're emptying out and you're surrendering, right, you're creating that empty vessel that I talked about, that open receptacle. Grace wants to pour into that. So do remember, again, I'll say it, that as grace pours into you, it's not just something that happens to you. It happens through you. I've been studying the work of Joanna Macy lately. She teaches something called the work that reconnects, which is very much about healing ourselves so we can help to heal the planet. And she says, when you act on behalf of something greater than yourself, you begin to feel it acting through you with a power that is greater than your own. This empowerment is grace. So if you'd like, join me in repeating these affirmations that are going to help you really embody and feel these different ways that you can open to grace more in your life. So repeat after me. I am an open receptacle for grace. I am an open receptacle for grace. I release the polarities and stand in equanimity. I release the polarities and stand in equanimity. I trust the process and live in the divine flow. I trust the process and live in divine flow. I am grateful. I am grateful. I surrender to grace and open to serenity. I surrender to grace and I open to serenity. And I allow grace to act through me and make a difference in the world. I allow grace to act through me and make a difference in the world. Take a couple deep breaths on all of that. Feel that you are filled up with that. And now go forth, open to perceive and receive grace. Thank you.
Come as you are, bring every burden. Come as you are, bring all your shame. Come as you are, I know you're hurting, but when you call upon his name and surrender, you'll never be the same. Come as you are. All who are broken, come as you are and find His grace. Come as you are. His arms are open. Let go and let God just have His way and surrender. And you'll never be the same, no. Come as you are, your past is over. Come as you are, break every chain. Come as you are, He holds the future, all things are new. This is the day to surrender, surrender, and you'll never be the same. Oh, no, no, you'll never be the same. Never be the same. It doesn't matter where you've been or the color of your skin. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you've been. Doesn't matter what you've been. Doesn't matter.
All right, if your eyes weren't already closed, go ahead and let them close now and turn your attention inward, especially inward to your heart. And as BJ led us in the beginning, come back to your breath. Come back to breathing into your belly and your heart. And then as you're exhaling out, letting yourself soften. Breathing into your heart. And with every exhalation, softening and opening. As if perhaps you were a water lily or a lotus flower. And every exhalation allows a petal to start to unfold very gently. Breathing deeply into your divine self within. Exhaling and feeling that opening now happen more fully. That maybe your flower, your water lily, is fully open now, unfolding. It's the representation of your openness to the divine, to spirit, which is always here. It's always shining upon us like the light in that image there through the trees. And it's for us to open to it, to receive that light. You might imagine that lotus or that water lily at your heart center in the middle of your chest, fully opening, and that divine light of blessings, of grace pouring into you through your heart. Breathing it in. Every exhalation opening more. Can you be more receptive? Can you allow more opening to happen? Every exhalation releasing anything in the way of that, releasing any thoughts or beliefs that might hold you back or block you from fully receiving that infinite grace. Breathing in that divine light and releasing the need to do anything as you exhale, releasing worthiness and unworthiness. There's nothing you need to do to be worthy of receiving that because it's already given to you. It's already always, in all ways, being poured into you. Receive. You are the divine receptacle, always capable of receiving that infinite love and light. So take that with you in your heart. Receive that in your heart because it's already here. Take 3 more deep breaths, acknowledging this, acknowledging what is here and what is given to you without expectation. And as you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Many blessings.